What's up, fine people? I want to talk about the future of Ghost Recon. The series went from something genre-defining and exciting to something generic and bland. It went from innovation to self-immolation. It went from special to special. One of the many unique features that was dropped instead of upgraded is SLLS, Stop, Look, Listen, Smell. It's a tactic that is taught in the military so that soldiers can avoid being ambushed or forfeiting their covertness. It allows them to gain advantage. Okay, I'm kind of stretching it with this one, but it's not that bad. From what I've heard, Tom Clancy insisted that the Rainbow Six game have a heartbeat sensor. It allowed players to see heartbeats through walls. It was based on a real technology. As far as I remember, you can see the heartbeats when you equip and use the sensor, but you can also see them on the map if your avatar has the sensor in its inventory. I don't remember the maximum distance, but it was not far, which definitely makes sense for an old portable device. Ghost Recon changed it significantly. Instead of sensors that could be used while moving, players had sensors that had to be permanently placed. It would show enemies within 25 meters or something. They were always displayed, unlike the pulsing effect seen in Rainbow Six. That might not seem like much of a SLLS mechanism, but that wasn't the mechanism that I wanted to point out. The one I wanted to point out is far from perfect, but it is the starting point for Ghost Recon. The compass in Ghost Recon 1 has an arrow pointing north, an arrow pointing to the waypoint set by your planning in the TAC map, and it has the threat indicator, which can be turned off for an added challenge. The threat indicator's outside is separated into 4 parts. If a part is yellow, there is an enemy in that quadrant. The inside of the indicator is a circle that turns red if an enemy is within 40 meters. Future Soldier and Breakpoint have sensor grenades that give the player wall hacks. Breakpoint also has an ability for wall hacks. Wildlands has a synchronized shot system that can alert you to enemies behind walls when you aim at them, same as Breakpoint, but that's more of a development oversight. However, you can also tag enemies and track them through walls, and your teammates will mark enemies they cannot even see. Instead of a SLLS system, you get wall hacks, and the enemies tend to speak often and loudly. So, obviously, Ghost Recon has never had a very realistic SLLS mechanism. Instead, you get some form of wall hacks, and it's much worse recently. Even the threat indicator from Ghost Recon 1 has problems. If it were only the center circle being used, it would be more realistic, except it still only indicates enemies and their vehicles, not friendlies or civilians or other things. With that said, it is not about whether the idea has been realistically implemented in the past, but if it's a realistic thing. Without a doubt, it is realistic. It is a genuine tactic of the US military. They teach soldiers to stop, look around, and listen for a while. Smell for anything distinct, and then proceed. It is quite logical to have such a tactic simulated in Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Ghost Recon is supposed to be a tactical shooter. Players should be forced to be thoughtful or die. By having powerful and intelligent enemies, the game can stop players from running and gunning their way to success. They can be taught to be tactical. They can be encouraged to stop, look, listen, smell. Instead of using a magical cloak of invisibility, players can use real military methods. Instead of tagging enemies using magnet vision or whatever other form of wall hacks, players can use SLLS to know when to be extra cautious. Players could also command their subordinates to use the tactic, increasing the realism and immersion. It could not only allow players to have more authentic and useful depictions of sight and hearing, it would also depict smell, a sense that is rarely portrayed in video games. It can be incredibly useful for gameplay, especially in tactical shooters. Perhaps the enemies recently snuffed a fire. You could smell the smoke. Now you know there are enemies in the area. Perhaps you enter a building and smell gunpowder. You know there are probably weapons nearby. Some of the smells might be coming from civilians, fauna, or flora, but the gameplay experience becomes more thought-provoking and tactical. It becomes highly unique. The implementation of SLLS is not difficult. Stopping is already a part of Ghost Recon. Looking is already a part of Ghost Recon, however, I would take it further. Listening is already a part of Ghost Recon, but I would take that further too. Smelling is not a part of Ghost Recon or of most other games. That would be the biggest addition. While this following part isn't restricted to the SLLS mechanism that I want to add, it is related to the methodology. It supplements the system. I would love to see the fauna being used to impact gameplay. While I'm not opposed to a bobcat attacking the player or flies harassing the player's vision and hearing, I'm not focusing on that here. Instead, I'm talking about birds singing until they notice a human. It can indicate to the player and to smarter bots that a human is around. I'm talking about deer running away when the wind transports the smell of a human. I'm talking about squirrels waving their tails and making warning calls. I'm talking about a deep system that improves gameplay and immerses players into the game's environment. It would be great for the fauna to react to humans in the environment, and it would be better if certain bots respond to the reactions. I don't know much about flora, but I would be open to that reacting realistically too. Before I talk about the effects, I should mention the controls for gamepads. The left trigger would aim when partially pressed. When fully pressed, the player would enter a focus mechanism. It lowers the field of view, steadies the weapon, and reduces recoil. Pressing X would cycle between long guns and launchers, while double tapping it would pull the handgun, and holding it would put the weapon into a low port position. Players could enter a command menu by holding D-pad up, then holding A would open a combat submenu. Finally, double tapping D-pad down would enter the SLLS mechanism, along with telling any selected soldiers to do the same. Obviously, having a feature-rich game is easier with keyboards and mice, and the functions could be bound to their own inputs. Walking would remove the player from the SLLS mechanism, but they would be able to rotate, change stances, lean, aim, and focus. With gamepads, if the weapon is down, the player can focus without aiming. If the weapon is up, they will aim first. Any D-pad input would also cancel SLLS. For keyboard players, they would be able to choose when to aim or focus. Hitting the SLLS input would cancel it, but walking would also cancel it. While SLLS is activated, there would be outlines of important objects in the player's sight. The player could use focus to lower the field of view. There would be a vignette effect. SLLS would also muffle ambient sounds, allowing players to more easily notice noises such as vehicles, doors, footsteps, motors, and more. Now the only thing remaining is the smelling part. Activating SLLS would trigger a timer that soon lists nearby scents. Using the focus mechanism would re-trigger the timer. A voiceover could be used to tell players of more important scents so that they can play without text on the screen, or the lines can simply say that someone is nearby or they should be more cautious in the area. That could even be done with a hand gesture. Some of the scents would be foods, human waste, body odor, gasoline, gunpowder, smoke, and perfumes, including those found in soaps and detergents. Optionally, players could choose to have SLLS automatically activate when they are stationary for a few seconds. Because my gamepad scheme has a function for lowering the weapon, the option could be set to only activate when the weapon is down. The command in the D-pad's menu would toggle the function to stay off or to come on when the player is stopped. Whichever way, the result is still that even gamepad users would have a beneficial, realistic, and tactical mechanism that can set Ghost Recon apart from competitors. Ubisoft needs to stop chasing trends. Generally, it has not been working. I would much rather they spend less money making the future Ghost Recon games and try making something profound because of its uniqueness. If they spend $300 million on the game, they are going to demand that it is extremely popular. If they spend far less, they can consider making something that might be niche, but it might also be the biggest thing ever. Siege has become very popular, and I think that's mainly because of the destruction system. Ubi tried to innovate, and it worked. Now the game is a virtue-signaling arcade action shooter that doesn't deserve the Tom Clancy or Rainbow Six names, but it is extremely popular. I think it's reasonable to try to innovate with Ghost Recon, but bring the game back to its tactical roots. Along with the many abandoned features that once made the intellectual property special, there are many other features that can be added. SLLS is one of them. SLLS is a genuine military tactic, and it can be realistically implemented into Ghost Recon. It can make the game more authentic and tactical. Ubi needs to focus on that sort of thing, rather than copying other games. When Gears of War became popular, Ubi turned Ghost Recon into a cover shooter. When Just Cause was popular, Ubi turned Ghost Recon into an open-world action shooter. When Witcher became popular, Ubi turned Ghost Recon into an RPG with crafting. When Fortnite became popular, Ubi turned Ghost Recon into a battle royale. Instead of seeing that Expedition 33 is popular and trying to turn Ghost Recon into a turn-based game with dodges, Ubi should watch my videos and turn away from trends. They need to stop this pattern. They need to focus on military strategies and tactics. They need to focus on simulation. Ubisoft needs to turn Ghost Recon into Ghost Recon again.